Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander, tough rules, and cool interactions, episode 48. Today's episode is another subscriber request, so I gotta give a shout out to all of you who have been watching this series and leaving comments and requests, as that of course does help with the algorithm on YouTube, but also I just love to read your reactions to these videos, how you've used the cards that I talk about, or how you've seen them used in games and things like that. So on to the cards in question for today's episode: Hall of Gemstone and Fellwar Stone. Let's see what they do. Hall of Gemstone is a world enchantment that has oracle text saying, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses a color. Until end of turn, lands tapped for mana produce mana of the chosen color instead of any other color. It's a very powerful enchantment that, if you're in a mono-green deck, it is a great way to shut off your opponents from using some non-green interaction against you on your turn. Things like counterspells and instant speed removal spells like Swords and Path. Sadly, the reason I ended up removing it from my mono-green decks is because that it ends up being a sort of a stacks piece against multicolored decks, and shutting them down even on their own turns. Some of you may want to do that in your playgroups, and that's totally fine if your playgroup is at that level, but for my usual playgroups, it's a bit too brutal for us. Alright, now on to Fellwar Stone. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with Fellwar Stone, but let's take a look at the current oracle text. It's a 2-mana artifact that says tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So some of you can probably already see where we're going with this interaction. The Fellwar adds mana of a color that the lands are able to produce, but Hall of Gemstone changes that. So will the stone still see the original colors that the lands were capable of producing, or will the Hall actually limit the stone to a single color picked during the upkeep? Sadly, for the wielder of the Fellwar Stone, but it will in fact only be able to tap and produce the mana that the player picked for the Hall during upkeep. We do have to take into account any replacement effects applying to those lands when determining what they are able to produce. It is a bummer, as mana rocks and mana dorks are often the only way out of a Hall of Gemstone lock, but in the stone's case, it will not be able to break said lock. Some bonus little facts about these two cards. Fellwar Stone can only add any of the 5 actual colors of magic from the WUBRG colors. If someone has out a waste or any other kind of land that can produce a colorless mana, then you cannot use the stone to produce that colorless mana in order to help you cast or use an activated ability on something like Endbringer. Similarly, Hall of Gemstone only changes the colored mana on lands, but if they have the ability to tap for a colorless mana, then they will still be able to do that. For example, a Darkar Waste would be able to tap for a green and deal 1 damage to you, or you could tap it for a colorless mana and take no damage from it. And then my last little bonus fact, a sort of expansion on the last fact: the Hall does not add the ability to produce mana. So if you have out something like a Maze of Ith, then it will not be given the ability to add a mana of the chosen color. It will still only be able to remove creatures from combat. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that even a few of you may have possibly learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.